Hello, everybody, and welcome to Atheist Sunday School, your one-stop shop for everything Atheist Sunday and School. And boy, do we have a show for you today. Today we are covering Acts of the Apostles, chapters 25 through 28.
There we go. And we're finishing Acts.
Yes, of the Apostles.
Yes, of the Apostles. And then after this, we're going to be getting into the Pauline epistles.
Yes.
Starting off with Romans. Yeah.
And our material isn't exceedingly long today.
Right, yeah. So these 4 chapters, not super long, but of course, if you remember, a lot of the chapters in Acts and in Luke were pretty long.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have a few short ones to end it off.
Yeah. And I'm reading the King James Version of the Bible.
I have the English Standard Version.
We also have the Jewish Annotated New Testament and the NIV Study Bible.
We have Erdman's commentary on the Bible. We have from the Hermenius series a commentary and translation from Hans Conselmann. And we also have the Greek New Testament and a textual guide to the Greek New Testament.
As well as the New King James Version of the Bible, the text of the New Testament by Bruce Metzger, and the Historical Jesus in Context by Amy Jill Levine and others.
Perfect.
Alongside Josephus.
Oh yeah, that's right. We have Josephus
and the Oxford Companion to the Bible.
Yeah, but we don't talk about the Oxford Companion.
Yeah, it's bad.
It is bad unless you've never read the Bible before.
Unless Oxford wants to sponsor us, in which case it's great.
Oh yeah, we love it. Thanks, Oxford.
We've had it in every episode.
Almost
every episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So it would be kind of neat if they did, though, right?
If anyone sponsored us, Lawrence, anyone at all.
At this point, they owe us.
Right.
We bought their shitty book.
They owe us for buying their shitty book.
Yep.
And then continuously blasting it.
All right. So, anything you want to say about chapter 25 before I hop into it?
No, nothing about the whole section, no.
All right. Then without further ado, chapter 25. Now, when Festus was come into the province, after 3 days, he ascended from Caesarea to Jerusalem. Then the high priest and the chief of the Jews informed him against Paul, and besought him, and desired favor against him, that he would send for him to Jerusalem, laying wait in the way to kill him.
Yeah, so
obviously something you're not supposed to do according to the wisdom literature.
Yeah, that's something you're specifically not supposed to do, and they're doing it. How horrible. So we know practically nothing about I just looked up the translation of this. Was it Porcius? Was it Porcius? Porcius, right?
Porcius.
Okay. We know practically nothing about Porcius Festus, or was it Porcius? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Porcius Festus. We know him only through Acts and Josephus. He took office around 55 or 56 CE and died about 62. In the interim, before the arrival of his successor Albinus, the high priest of Ananus had James, the brother of Jesus, put to death. Yeah. All right.
Yes. A rare example of an early celebrator of Festus. Yes.
Indeed.
Anyways. So they're not interested in legal matters at this point. The chief of the Jews.
Nope.
And all those who are siding with the chief of the Jews. They're really playing into like the unhinged Jewish murder machine
what
thing here.
I mean, that exists in the Bible.
But like legitimately,
let's note
that's like what they've been doing, right? They're continually trying to kill these people.
In the New Testament, yeah.
Even though Gamaliel says that they shouldn't.
Wasn't it like David who went and killed his tens of thousands? or something.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Saul
Some
had
huge
his
Jew that
thousands.
Yeah,
Saul
Some
had
huge
his
Jew that
thousands.
just goes nuts and kills everybody.
Yeah.
It's not a weird stereotype.
Yeah. But here, like,
It's much more pointed.
they're even
Yes,
evading
true.
their own legal system that they're in charge of. It's like they're just trying to like
Kill 'em.
set up people in alleyways to kill these people.
Well, yeah,
now.
yeah. And the thing is, if you remember the way that we've had some other people act, like we had Pilate, he was, he wasn't exactly a fan of doing that kind of persecution necessarily, but
Right.
then he was like, peer pressured into it basically. But historically, that would not have happened or made any sense at all, because you can't convict someone on that basis.
Yeah. There's a lot of historical inaccuracies with the Pilate story. And also what happened to his wife and all those other versions of the story.
Right, yeah.
Come on, she has visions in one of them and is super cool for one verse.
Yeah.
But nope, nowhere else. Okay, but Festus answered, and Paul should be kept at Caesarea, that he himself would depart shortly thither. Let them, therefore, said he, which among you are able, go down with me, and accuse this man, if there be any wickedness in him. And when they had tarried among them more than 10 days, he went down unto Caesarea, and the next day, sitting on the judgment seat, commanded Paul to be brought. When he was come, the Jews which came down from Jerusalem stood round about, and laid many and grievous complaints against Paul, which they could not prove. While he answered for himself, neither against the law of the Jews, nor against the temple, nor against Caesar, have I offended anything at all. But Festus, willing to do the Jews a pleasure, answered Paul and said, Wilt thou go up to Jerusalem, and there be judged of these things before me?
Yeah, so the fundamental problem is formulated more sharply than before. From the standpoint of the Jews, no charge can be made against the Christians. Here also no claim is made that Christianity should be recognized as a legitimate group within Judaism. Rather, the Jewish charges are denied. There has been no infringement of Roman law. Yeah, that is accurate. This is also important in the view of the favor Festus intends to do for the Jews. He has no reason to send Paul to Jerusalem. The second point certainly does have to do with Roman law, because this law guaranteed the protection of the temple. But the issue here concerns the specific charge against Paul and not the general legal status of Christianity. The government represented by Caesar is finally addressed. There has been no offense.
Mm-hmm. And where Festus asks if he's willing to go to Jerusalem, the study Bible notes, obviously not. Festus said that the trial would be before him. So Paul insisted that he was then standing in the Roman civil court.
Right,
He wanted to keep his trial there rather than suffer at the hands of a Jewish religious court. As a Roman citizen, he could refuse to go to a local provincial court. Instead, he looked to a higher Roman court.
Yeah, it has pretty much explained like why he wasn't set free, right? Because he's just choosing to stay.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I rather like it here. The outside world is hellish.
Yeah.
They want to kill me out there.
Then said Paul, I stand at Caesar's judgment seat, where I ought to be judged. To the Jews have I done no wrong, as thou very well knowest. For if I be an offender or have committed anything worthy of death, I refuse not to die. But if there be none of these things whereof these accuse me, no man may deliver me unto them. I appeal unto Caesar. Then Festus, when he had conferred with we haven't really had this language out of any characters in the New Testament yet, where they're like, nope, Caesar's judgment. I want Caesar's judgment. Caesar's
Right,
great.
yeah.
We're going with Caesar, right?
Yeah.
Normally
It's just
there would
he
be.
switches sides when he needs to.
Well, because
I understand.
Well, the thing is with Paul specifically, he's had a lot of real bad luck when it came to trying to preach to Jews, and they always end up kicking him out or putting him in prison or something,
or trying to kill him.
Convicting him with a riot.
Right. Yeah. So he's he just figures, okay, I'm
skeptical.
Probably safer with with Caesar in this case.
Yeah. Imagine being Paul though. He's like, look, all I'm doing is going places and talking to people, and then there's people trying to kill me. There's riots constantly.
Yeah.
This sucks, man. I'd rather hang out with the Romans.
Right.
Then Festus, when he had conferred with the council, answered, Hast thou appealed unto Caesar? Unto Caesar shalt thou go. And after certain...
so that's interesting. Hold on. So is yours posed as a question?
Halfway. Hast thou appealed unto Caesar?
Yeah.
Unto Caesar shalt thou go.
So the translation here is you have appealed to Caesar you shall go.
Okay.
And I can check the Greek to see if it's
why did they change that?
It's not like a huge detail, but it is interesting, so I can certainly check the Greek. What verse is that?
That was verse 12.
Verse 12. Okay, yeah, I can check. There's usually just like a very simple indicator of this. So yeah, 25:12. It looks like, yeah, no, it's not a question. There is no, because usually, so in Greek, when you have a question, it usually has a T at the beginning. So like in English, it looks like a TI. But yeah, that's not in the Greek.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay.
It literally just says like, at that time. So
right.
It's a statement of fact.
Yep. So the KJV did it again.
Yep, they did it again.
Worst translation.
Best translation.
Yeah, right.
And after actually, bad translation, but best version.
Oh, right. All right.
It's the KJV, not the KJT.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
And after certain days, King Agrippa and Bernice came in unto Caesarea to salute Festus. Yeah, just Bernice.
Yeah, Bernice.
That's wonderful. And when they had been there many days, I know we talked about their romance last time.
Right, yeah.
And when they'd been there many days, Festus declared Paul's cause unto the king, saying, There's a certain man left in bonds by Felix, about whom, when I was at Jerusalem, the chief priests and the elders of the Jews informed me, desiring to have judgment against him. To whom I answered, It is not the manner of the Romans to deliver any man to die before that he which is accused have the accusers face to face, and have license to answer for himself concerning the crime laid against him. Therefore, when they were come hither, without any delay on the morrow, I sat on the judgment seat and commanded the man to be brought forth. Against whom the accusers stood up, they brought none accusation of such things as I supposed, but had certain questions against him of their own superstition, and of one Jesus, which was dead, whom Paul affirmed to be alive. And because I doubted of such manner of questions, I asked him whether he would go to Jerusalem and there be judged of these matters. But when Paul appealed to be reserved unto the hearing of Augustus, I commanded him to be kept till I might send him to Caesar. Then Agrippa said unto Festus, I would also hear the man myself. Tomorrow, said he, thou shalt hear him. And on the morrow, when Agrippa was come, and Bernice, with great pomp, and I like how they keep adding and
Bernice, yeah.
She's not doing anything, but she's
there.
It's the Ann Knuckles of our readings.
And I do want to...
oh, man. We should make a Sanic and Bernice shirt.
Oh, that's pretty good.
That sounds horrible.
It would be great.
All right. But yeah, speaking of shirts, if you're talking about this specific shirt in chat, this is not our shirt.
No.
So
it's completely.
Neither is this.
No, that's just
that's
no
a
one
generic
cares.
flank shirt. I love that, but no, that shirt's for Swift
or Swift or Craft. What does it say on the back?
Craft.
Yeah, this is from Craft. I don't even know if I don't know if they're online or anything.
No.
No.
You can't even find this. Yeah, it's a forbidden shirt.
Yeah. Kenosha, Racine area Free Thinkers is the group. And
Milwaukee has a whole bunch of weird organizations too, but every place in Wisconsin does.
But we're the true Milwaukee Atheists.
Yeah, because we got the name. So,
Yeah.
You're right.
yeah.
And we've been doing the work.
Damn straight. At least on YouTube, we've been doing the
We are
work.
in Milwaukee. So.
Yep.
Yeah. So
we're not quite local heroes yet.
We're getting there. We're getting
Legends.
You've been noticed, right?
there. I have been noticed a few times. Yeah.
Yeah, nobody knows
I
who
haven't.
I am
Over the
thankfully.
years.
I have not. I also don't go a lot of places, so.
Yeah, ditto.
Fair enough. Yeah. But yeah, this one is not an our store. If you're wondering that, completely different.
Anyways, talking about Bernice here.
Yeah.
When Agrippa was come and Bernice, with great pomp, and was entered into the place of hearing with the chief captains and principal men of the city, at Festus's commandment, Paul was brought forth. And Festus said, King Agrippa, and all men which are here present with us, ye see this man about whom all the multitude of the Jews have dealt with me, both at Jerusalem and also here, crying that he ought not to live any longer. But when I found that he had committed nothing worthy of death, and that he himself hath appealed to Augustus, I have determined to send him, of whom I have no certain thing to write unto my Lord, wherefore I have brought him forth before you, and specifically before thee, O King Agrippa, that after examination had, I might have something to write.
Yeah. So he's got nothing of note.
Yeah, he's like, look, I can't send him to Caesar with nothing.
Yeah.
So I need something here.
Yeah, but this verse provides the reason for this spectacle in an artificial manner. What Festus says is self-contradictory. He had enough material. The contradiction results from Luke's literary aim. Kurios, Lord, as an imperial title, was used since the time of Claudius. This passage seems to be the earliest known evidence for the absolute use of ho Kurios, the Lord, during the time of Domitian, which is interesting. In any case, the title is already used as if it needed no explanation. Yeah, the language is again technical juristic vocabulary. Yeah, definitely the one that's pointed out here. Before you, definite examination. Yeah.
Okay. For it seemeth to me unreasonable to send a prisoner, and not withal to signify the crimes laid against him. And that's the end of chapter 25.
Yeah.
Hey, if you're enjoying that stream today, give us a like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, family, neighbors, wrongfully and rightfully accused.
You know what? They would all especially love seeing this. So while you do that, I can probably start chapter 26.
Well, if you can, then you should.
I mean, I assume so.
Yeah.
There's entirely the possibility that I've just forgotten how to read. And watch me just
Words.
read
It's
this.
happened before.
It has happened before.
Not terribly recently, but one time you were just stuttering, like over your words, like a long time ago.
Yeah, that does.
Didn't matter. Her audio equipment was terrible.
All
That's
right.
true. It was. It was
So
just awful.
we're about to hop into Paul's final defense.
Yeah, Paul's defense before Agrippa. All
So in this corner,
right. We got Agrippa because Agrippa said to Paul,
and Bernice.
"No, don't.
No, Bernice isn't here.
No, not right now. This is
Wow.
this is Agrippa speaking,
Okay.
not Bernice."
I don't think Bernice ever says anything. They're just there.
Well, in that last chapter, just there, yeah. So
See, I bet they never say anything.
you have permission to speak for yourself.
Yeah, so he has to give permission to speak because he's leading the court.
Right.
Yeah, it makes sense. Fuck, I gotta take a drink.
Congratulations. Enjoy. Ooh, isn't that nice?
You know, this always seems to just happen on Sundays.
You like water?
Yeah,
Is it wet?
I hate you. We're not getting into this. Not getting into this.
Not
But
today.
this rarely happens on Fridays anymore. It happens on Sundays.
No, because your body's gotten into its routine.
Yeah,
of
the one where
being horribly thirsty when you need to be reading.
Fun.
yeah, but only on Sundays.
Yeah.
So
Anyways.
then Paul stretched out his hand and made his defense. I consider myself fortunate that it is before you, King Agrippa. I am going to make my defense today against all accusations of the Jews.
So he first he had been speaking to Agrippa, but at this point must have addressed others as well, such as Festus and the commanders who didn't believe in the resurrection. Agrippa was also allied with the Sadducees, whom he appointed high priests, and was likely to reject both the resurrection of the Christ and resurrection in general. So the characters here are dramatically different, and that will come into play as you get further into the chapter.
All right, so he's gonna defend himself here against all the accusations of the Jews, especially because you are familiar with all the customs and controversies of the Jews. Therefore, I beg you to listen to me patiently. My manner of life from my youth, spent from the beginning among my own nation and in Jerusalem, is known by all Jews. They have known for a long time, if they are willing to testify, that according to the strictest party of our religion, I have lived as a Pharisee. And
Right.
now,
So Paul is signaling here that the charges against him are based on violation of Jewish and not Roman laws. So that it would be judged differently.
makes sense.
He's identifying himself as a Pharisee as he did before. So he's giving himself that street cred as an observant Jew.
Yeah. Or at least he was.
Yeah, which would cast doubt onto the claim that he's violated Jewish law, which is the claim made against him.
Right, yeah. So I guess we'll see how it goes. But this is, he's talking to Agrippa here. So,
Yeah.
I have lived as a Pharisee, and now I stand here on trial because of my hope in the promise made by God to our fathers, to which our 12 tribes hope to attain, as they earnestly worship night and day. And for this hope I am accused by Jews, O king. Why is it thought incredible by any of you that God raises the dead? I don't think that...
Well, this would be a reference
so that would
to
be
Agrippa's...
the Pharisee thing, right? Because they didn't believe in that.
No, the Sadducees didn't believe in the resurrection of the dead. And he's identifying himself as a Pharisee, which is part of the group that does believe in the resurrection of the dead. So instead of having it be like a complaint against his actions, he's generalizing it to a complaint made by these silly Sadducees against Pharisees, because he's just pronouncing Pharisee beliefs. But Agrippa has previously identified himself in alignment with the Sadducees by appointing them as high priests. So...
I myself was convinced that I ought to do many things in opposing the name of Jesus of Nazareth, and I did so in Jerusalem. I not only locked up many of the saints in prison after receiving authority from the chief priests, but when they were put to death, I cast my vote against them.
That does not necessarily mean that he was a member of the Sanhedrin. He may have been appointed to a commission to carry out prosecution where his voice was given, but it is possible that he was a member of the Sanhedrin.
Yeah, so casting... It is interesting that they said that he cast his vote against them, very specifically. So yeah, his activity as a persecutor is of course like intensified, because before he didn't make it seem like he was the person making those decisions. So according to Luke, Paul actively participated in the voting. It is assumed that the Jewish authorities had the ius gladi, or gladi, I don't know, it's Latin, the right to execute capital criminals. Estas exopoles, I guess it would be into outside cities. is a generalization of Damascus. I guess it's translated here as 2 foreign cities, but that's fine. Yeah. All right, I suppose.
Yeah. So what we're getting into now is he's recounting his conversion, which is a story that we've seen multiple times. The first account is when it actually happened to him. The second account is when he was describing what happened to him, and now he's describing what happened to him in a court setting. What you're going to notice here is that the details are different between the 3 of them. Now, the apologetic that's used in Eerdmans is that he was delivering information to be suited to the events at the time and place each time that he recounted this conversion story, which is entirely possible.
Yeah, a lot of biblical texts are just like that, where they take already existing motifs and kind of restructure them for their current purposes. Mm-hmm. Where it has very similar story arc, but many of the details change.
Yes.
So, continuing on here, I cast my vote against them, and I punished them often in all the synagogues and tried to make them blaspheme. And in raging fury against them, I persecuted them even to foreign cities. Yeah, so that was the note there. So this section on blaspheming, I think the ESV has a fine translation here, but it looks like there have been some translation difficulties where people added in tried, I tried to make them blaspheme, but that's not what the verb suggests. Anyways, on to verse 12 here. So now this is Paul talking about his own conversion.
Yes.
In this connection, I journeyed to Damascus with the authority and commission of the chief priests. At midday, O king, I saw on the way a light from heaven, brighter than the sun, that shone around me and those who journeyed with me. Very interesting. Okay. Mm-hmm. And when we had all fallen to the ground, I heard a voice saying to me in the Hebrew language,
It was not stated to be Hebrew before. This is a new detail.
Yeah, okay.
It is Jesus speaking now.
Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? It is hard for you to kick against the goads. And I said...
So this kicking against the goads thing, that's not previously quoted. What it actually is a Greek proverb.
Yeah, it looks like a Greek proverb. This is found in Euripides in the Bacchae in connection with the pursuit of the new god. But we need not assume any literary dependence on Luke on Euripides because the saying was widespread.
Yeah, the Greek proverb is for useless resistance. The ox succeeds only in hurting itself while kicking against the goads.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's good to know.
Yes, it's depicting Paul as resisting the pressure of God's plan.
But he's only hurting himself.
By comparing him to a draft animal kicking the stick used to make it move in the desired direction.
Yeah, and I said, "Who are you, Lord?" I like how they just assume the Lord there. And the Lord said, "I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. But rise and stand upon your feet, for I have appeared to you for this purpose, to appoint you as a servant and witness to the things in which you have seen me, and to those in which I will appear to you, delivering you from your people and from the Gentiles, to whom I am sending you, to open their eyes, so that they may turn from darkness to light and from the power of Satan to God."
So from darkness to light is a transformation that occurs frequently when one acknowledges God. In this context, it's acknowledging Jesus as well. As for Satan, this conversion marks moving away from the powers of evil. The implication may be that Jews who resist conversion are under Satan's control.
Yeah, I got to remember that at this point in time, the idea of Satan it's not, fully fledged out as it is now,
right?
But it is much, much closer to our modern idea of a Satan. It's approaching right now the Satan of Revelation. It's very close. Not quite there, I don't think, but it's very close there. And we've seen literature from the same time period that also suggests this evolution, like I think the life of Adam and Eve as well. Yeah. So we're kind of moving in that direction.
Well, Satan's a major character in the life of Adam and Eve,
yeah.
like in a way that he really isn't in any other story.
Yeah, absolutely.
So far.
All right. Continuing on here. That they may receive forgiveness of sins and a place among those who are sanctified by faith in me. So very pious Christian language here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Therefore, O King Agrippa, I was not disobedient to the heavenly vision, but declared first to those in Damascus, then in Jerusalem, and throughout all the region of Judea, and also to the Gentiles, that they should repent and turn to God, performing deeds in keeping with their repentance.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing important here, I don't think, or nothing huge, I should say, in the commentary. So continuing on. For this reason, the Jews seized me in the temple and tried to kill me. To this day, I have had the help that comes from God. And so I stand here testifying both to small and great, saying nothing but what the prophets and Moses said would come to pass, that the Christ must suffer, and that by being the first to rise from the dead, he would proclaim light both to our people and to the Gentiles. So when it says the first to rise from the dead, that's an interesting thing to say, because we have previously read biblical texts where people rise from the dead. Now, of course, Lazarus. It was through the power of a prophet, like in like Elijah's story, right? That was how that person rose from the dead. Right. However, this could be interpreted as like the first person to rise from the dead in this end time that they're talking about.
Yeah, he's the first risen guy.
The first fruits of the dead, to die no more. See 1 Corinthians 15:20 and Colossians 1:18.
So Colossians. That is interesting, and it's a shame that there's nothing more on it in the commentary, but I would think that it would be because of because the end times have to start somewhere, right? And this would be the first instance of that, which is kind of the idea that Jesus has of himself in the Gospels, I would say.
Yeah, it says here in 1 Corinthians 15:20, but Christ has indeed been raised from the dead, the first fruits of those who have fallen asleep. For since death came through a man, the resurrection of the dead comes also through a man.
Yeah. So, very, very poetic, But that's how they viewed it. So continuing on here. There's also a good chapter in what is it? It's by the author who wrote this, or who edited it, I guess. James D.G. Dunn. Yeah, he has a 3-part series on. It's called Christianity in the Making, and the first volume is or is it called? No, sorry. So the series is called Jesus Remembered, and the first part is Christianity in the Making. And in it, he talks about Jesus' understanding of himself as the servant, and he points out that Jesus would have seen himself as the first step in this end time prophecy, essentially.
Right. He came to fulfill the law, right?
Yeah, exactly. So continuing on, with verse 24, and as he was saying these things in his defense, Festus said with a loud voice, Paul, you're out of your mind. Your great learning is driving you out of your mind. But Paul said, I am not out of my mind, most excellent Festus, but I am speaking true and rational words.
So the actual accusation is that the governor felt that Paul's education and reading of the scriptures had led him to mania about prophecy and resurrection.
Right. He was either taking it too literally or taking it too far, which people still argue about it today.
End is nigh.
Exactly, end is nigh. And all those fucking doomsday cults.
World is flat, end is nigh.
Yeah, shit like that. It's
justification.
It's hilarious. It's hilarious to watch from afar and just quietly hope it doesn't become widespread.
It will.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Continuing on here. So he's saying those words are rational. For the king knows about these things, and to him I speak boldly. For I am persuaded that none of these things has escaped his notice, for this has not been done in a corner. So yeah.
This gospel is based on actual events, lived out in historical times and places. The king must himself attest to the truth of what Paul has affirmed.
See, the thing is, in the way that it has been handed down to us, it seems like Paul is doing like some God, what's the word for it? He's kissing his ass. He's like, hey, I'm not talking crazy. I'm sure the king, being as smart and as great as he is, he understands. I'm sure he does.
Yeah, he's noticed.
Yeah, like he knows all this
None
stuff.
of this stuff has been hidden from the public.
Yeah, especially from the king.
Yeah.
But it seems like not just the stuff that, could have been hidden from the public, but even the stuff that he's telling him now about the truth of the matter, right?
So he's about to get Agrippa in a trick question here. So why don't you continue on?
King Agrippa, do you believe the prophets? I know that you believe.
So here, King Agrippa was faced with a dilemma. If he said yes, Paul would press him to recognize their fulfillment in Jesus.
Right, yeah.
If he said no, he would be in trouble with the devout Jews who accepted the message of the prophets as the very word of God.
Right, you could just say yes, but then it's not really a trap. It's just because of Paul's point of view.
The implication is that he believes that anyone who believes in the prophets should also believe in Jesus.
Right, yeah, like I get that, but it doesn't even logically follow.
Right.
Because what he would determine as the prophets, well, I guess it would be the same, right? But I guess you would call Jesus one of them.
Is this based on a true story?
Well, so maybe partially, but it is definitely very what's the word I'm looking for? Exaggerated.
You know that movie Titanic?
Yeah, you know that movie Titanic. Right, based on a true story.
There was no epic music when it sank, guys.
Yep. Celine Dion was not present.
No,
okay.
No, she
I don't
was
think
not.
there was a giant diamond necklace or anything either.
It would have been cool.
Right. So like it's completely likely, or there's a good chance that like, Paul would have been, going around preaching. That's completely plausible. And it, maybe he got himself into some legal trouble, definitely in trouble with the Jews. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But when it comes to like this discussion in this way, where he's trying to trap him with this, having a trick question, getting a gotcha in, like, no, there's no way to actually know if that happened, because this is coming to us not only through generations of texts,
right,
but also it is just this was written in a period removed, or not so far removed, but still like a few decades after the events would have happened at all. So
it's very difficult to tell what is and is not supposed to be there from like real events.
Yeah, not just like what's not supposed to be there, but what's what actually really truly happened, right? So we're just kind of working with available evidence for that.
Mm-hmm. So we're now wrapping up this chapter, just about.
Yeah, we're almost done here. So let's see what he says here. And Agrippa said to Paul, in a short time, would you persuade me to be a Christian?
So the translation here is actually a little better. Do you think that in such a short time you can persuade me to be a Christian?
Oh, okay, yeah, that is
a little
better.
more pointed, right?
Yeah.
It's not only evading the question, it's also making assumptions about Paul's ends, but rightly so.
Yeah. Or depending on the Greek, it could be like in a short time, would you be able to persuade me to be a Christian? And Paul said, whether short or long, I would to God that not only you, but also all who hear me this day might become such as I am, except for these chains. Okay. Weird phrasing there.
Right.
Yeah, this is the only passage in the New Testament where a potential optative, is found in the main clause. Okay, so in optative would be like would, could, should, that kind of thing. So
would that I could.
Right, stuff like that. Those would be optatives, if I'm remembering that properly. There's another one that's similar, and I forget the name of it, but it's like may, perhaps, might, that kind of stuff.
Mayhaps.
Yeah, mayhaps, there you go. I forget the name of that one, though. So, shame on me. But either way.
Great shame.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but it's found in it's the only where potential optative is found in the main clause. All right, interesting.
Yep.
Because of course there's also the secondary clause.
Right.
Then the king rose, and the governor and Bernice.
There's Bernice.
And those who were sitting with them. And wait, hold on, what? Yeah, then the king rose. Okay, so everyone rose.
Yeah, they rose.
Yeah. And when they had withdrawn, they said to one another, this man is doing nothing to deserve death or imprisonment. And Agrippa said to Festus, this man could have been set free if he had not appealed to Caesar.
Wow. Well, I think that's the message there is that unlike what he usually would do and just appeal to God and Jesus and stuff, he appealed to Caesar and he sought out Caesar's judgment instead of putting Jesus in the mercy seat, right, in the judgment seat. He said specifically that he was subjecting himself to Caesar's judgment seat.
It was, yeah.
Right? So if he just wouldn't have done that, he would have been free at this point.
Well, of course he would have been free at this point. But, like, the whole point was, like, he was thinking, okay, well, it's safer for me if I'm not set free right now.
Right.
That was his whole thing. But anyways, that is the end of chapter 26. Hey, if you guys are enjoying the stream so far.
Wait, Lawrence, do you hear something?
Oh, you know what? Yes, I do. It's quite loud. Oh, no.
Jesus, take the wheel.
Behold, I am your Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And I want to let all you heathens and sinners know that I support this wonderful episode of Atheist Sunday School. Lawrence and Reuben try their very best to bring you the true glory of the Bible, and they need your help. They have provided links to their Patreon page and other social media just for you. Once again, my name is Jesus Christ, and this is Milwaukee Atheists. The Lord is with them. God bless.
Oh, hey, Jesus. We were just talking about your guy, Paul, your main man, Paul. So it seems like, it looks like he's in a good position right now. You know, the Romans didn't see that he did anything wrong. He did not break any Roman laws, but he already knew that.
Right. So he was just innocent to be there and prove himself innocent.
Right.
You know what I mean?
But as I see, Jesus has taken Reuben away.
Oh yeah.
Again, perhaps for some legal consultation, I'm guessing. Reuben,
Sure.
yeah,
Reuben's
Reuben
an expert.
really needs some legal consultation, and he's
I
gonna.
thought Jesus did.
Oh, maybe Jesus did. Yeah, maybe
From
Jesus.
Reuben.
From Reuben,
Yeah.
yes. So this next section that we're getting into, chapter 27, of course, we're moving on from the trial scene, and we're getting a voyage to Rome.
All right.
Yeah. In this account of a voyage, which is the only real description of a journey in the book, the we clearly seems to be a literary device. And hello, look who has returned.
Yes, but the Wii U is not a mere literary device.
It's hardly a device at all nowadays.
Yeah,
Yep.
Lost support. We all read about that.
Very
basically.
sad. Very sad indeed.
A
Yeah,
sad day for humanity.
So yeah, the we've gotten a good amount of Wii passages in Luke Acts, and sometimes it is hard to tell because they switch between we and they a lot. So whether or not the author was part of the group, or whether or not we have a whole bunch of textual additions, or these specific parts are textual additions, or maybe that was just the way that the author chose to write the whole thing, which would be weird. But yeah, I'm not entirely certain on that. But there are a lot of questions surrounding those. So yeah, one could ask whether it did not originate here and then was extended to the other voyages. The Western text, by adding "and secundus" at the end of verse 2, has seen the difficulty that "we" is used, even though Paul is the only Christian prisoner. Yeah, so this would be very strange if the author was trying to include himself there. So Augustan cohort was an honorary title, which could be used for auxiliary troops. There are a whole bunch of citations to that here. An Augustan cohort, an Augustan cohort, the first, perhaps the same one that we'll be talking about, was stationed in Syria during the time of Quirinius. Yeah, so that is good to know, I suppose.
All right, so we're getting into the adventure section.
We are,
which is where the book ends, really.
Yeah.
With these next two chapters. So
Priscilla and Aquila show up to disappear again.
It may be.
maybe, but strap yourselves in. We're taking the hobbits to Isengard. Chapter 27. And when it was determined that we should sail into Italy, they delivered Paul and certain other prisoners unto one named Julius, a centurion of Augustus's band. And entering into a ship of Adramyttium, what?
Yeah, and embarking in a ship of Adramyttium, yeah, I suppose. Yeah, so what is that?
Port city in the northwest of Asia Minor, present-day Turkey.
Oh, all right then.
Yep. We launched, meaning to sail by the coasts of Asia. One, Aristarchus, a Macedonian of Thessalonica, being with us. And the next day we touched at Sidon, and Julius courteously entreated Paul, and gave him liberty to go unto his friends to refresh himself. And when we had launched from thence, we sailed under Cyprus, because the winds were contrary. And when we had sailed over the Sea of Cilicia and Pamphylia, we came to Myra, a city of Lycia.
Yeah, so when they said that with the sailing under it, that is taking advantage of the island's protection from the wind. At this time of the year, the prevailing winds were from the northwest. Similarly, ships carrying grain from Alexandria sailed to the western tip of Cyprus, and from there to Myra. The voyage of the Isis, Voyage of the Isis provides an interesting parallel.
Yeah, so we're about to get, and there the centurion found a ship of Alexandria sailing into Italy, and he put us therein. So the ship of Alexandria, yes, its cargo was primarily grain. The city of Rome relied for much of its grain on shipments from Egypt. So that is the thing. And when we had sailed slowly many days, and scarce were come over against Cnidus, the wind not suffering us, we sailed under Crete, over against Salmon, and hardly passing it, came unto a place which is called the Fair Havens, nigh whereunto was the city of Lasea. This is the Fair Havens.
Yeah, the Fair Havens is not mentioned elsewhere. Lasea, the spelling varies, perhaps lay to the east of Cape Matala. A bay was there, open to the east, which is known today as Koloi Lemenes Paralegstai. So it'd be Fair Haven. Yeah, Fair Havens. And Paralegestai would be, I guess the coast along, but it's like a past tense.
Yeah, it's around the southern coast of Crete. Roundabout is where they are.
Or is this a what's it called? A passive. Either way.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be a middle form.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be a middle.
Now, when much time was spent, and when sailing was now dangerous, because the fast was now already past, Paul admonished them, and said unto them, Sirs, I perceive that this voyage will be with hurt and much damage, not only of the landing and ship, but also of our lives. Nevertheless, the centurion believed the master and the owner of the ship more than those things which were spoken by Paul. And because the haven was not commodious to winter in, the more part advised to depart thence also, if by any means they might attain to Phoenix, and there to winter, which is a haven of Crete, and lieth toward the southwest and northwest.
Yeah, so so this entire section here, for dating according to the Jewish calendar, we can compare chapter 20, verse 6. So we have, fast was the only day of atonement.
Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement.
Yep.
In late September, early October. Although not explicitly required by biblical law, fasting had become a widely practiced ritual performed on this day, according to Josephus.
Yeah, and the rabbis counted the beginning of the time when sailing was dangerous from the time of the Feast of Booths. So is the fast mentioned here in order to suggest that Paul observed it? If so, the datum is part of the insertion. This dating gives rise to a difficulty later on. The stay on Malta was supposed to have lasted for 3 months. This would result in a date probably too early for the continuation of the voyage to Rome, but Luke has obviously not squared the dates with one another, particularly since the reference to 3 months is a schematic detail. The difficulties are diminished if we see this as based on the Syrian Jewish calendar, which Josephus used. The year begins on the 19th of October, and the 10th of Tishri would then be the 28th of October.
So from this time of year until early spring, sailing in open waters was considered dangerous because of unfavorable prevailing winds. So there would have had to have been a period of at least a few months.
Yeah, but for verse 11, only in this passage are ranks distinguished. Elsewhere, only the general term sailors is used. It seems odd that later on the owner of the ship and the captain do not appear at the time of the shipwreck. This is a further indication that this passage is an insertion. Because, they would just use sailors before, but then they got more specific. For the relationship between ranks, compare Plutarch. A pilot selects sailors, and a ship captain selects a pilot. Oddly enough, it appears from our passage as if the centurion could make decisions about the voyage, but Luke does not really mean that. He only wants to show that all of the important people on the ship disagreed with Paul.
And when the south wind blew softly, supposing that they had obtained their purpose, loosening thence, they sailed close by Crete. But not long after there arose against it a tempestuous wind called Euroclydon. What?
Hold up.
This wind has a name.
What verse?
Verse 14.
Verse 14. But soon a tempestuous wind called the northeaster struck down from the land.
Typhoon-like east-northwest wind.
Yeah, but it is. You're right though that it is personified here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of like we do with hurricanes. No.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We do name them. Yeah.
And when the ship was caught and could not bear up into the wind, we let her drive, and running under a certain island, which is called Clauda, we had much work to come by the boat, which when they had taken up, they used helps undergirding the ship.
Oh, here's something kind of cool.
Hold on. Fearing lest they should fall into the quicksands, struck sail, and so were driven.
Okay, well, before we get into the quicksands, let's just hope we actually don't go into the quicksand. That doesn't sound fun.
No.
However, so yeah, the word in Greek is eurakulon, is a hybrid expression formed from euros, which is east southeast wind, and aquilo in Latin, I guess, northeast wind, and is therefore self-contradictory. Here it must mean approximately northeast. So I suppose that is interesting.
I see. And we, being exceedingly tossed with a tempest, the next day they lighted the ship, and the third day we cast out with our own hands the tackling of the ship, and when neither sun nor stars in many days appeared, and no small tempest lay on us, all hope that we should be saved was then taken away. But after long abstinence, Paul stood forth in the midst of them and said, Sirs, you should have hearkened unto me, and not have loosed from Crete, and to have gained this harm and loss. And now I exhort you to be of good cheer, for there shall be no loss of any man's life among you, but of the ship. For there stood by me this night the angel of God, whose I am, and whom I serve, saying, Fear not, Paul, thou must be brought before Caesar. And lo, God hath given thee all them that sail with thee. Wherefore, sirs, be of good cheer. For I believe God, that it should be even as it was told me. Howbeit, we must cast upon a certain island. But when the 14th night was come, as we were driven up and down in Adria about midnight, the shipmen deemed that they drew near to some country, and sounded and found it 20 fathoms.
So before we go on here, so verses 21 through 26, it looks like it's a second inserted episode. Verse 27 connects with verse 20, and then verses 21 and 22 pick up the theme of verses 10 through 11. Now Paul can return to center stage after he has been proven right, but this scene is completely unreal. A speech delivered on board a ship at the time of extreme distress in the midst of a hurricane is highly unlikely. Stathis came forward. So it's like an orator before a tribune. Okay, so I think this is the same route that was used for coming before Agrippa earlier on. Mm-hmm. Verse 27, it originally connected with verse 20. In its present context, the prophecy of Paul is now fulfilled. Diapherestai, to drift across. means to drift across. Adria was the name used for the sea at the time. In Josephus, the life of Josephus, they have it as well. He reports a shipwreck, which is in the midst of the Sea of Adria, that is on the journey to Rome. Ptolemy as well. He says Crete is bounded on the west by the Adriatic Sea. Yeah, so they just called it Adria. That's all the notes for now.
All right. So they sounded and found it 20 fathoms, and when they had gone a little further, they sounded again and found it 15 fathoms.
Oh, by the way, fathom. So in the Greek, it's hold on, let me see. Try to read this here. Orgua. This is a weird one. This is orguia. Orguia. Fathom is 6 feet.
So what they're doing is they're taking a weighted line and they're putting it in the water in order to measure the distance.
Or at least at measuring depth, yeah.
And then, fearing lest we should have fallen upon rocks, they cast 4 anchors out of the stern and wished for the day. And as the shipmen were about to flee out of the ship, when they had let down the boat into the sea under color, as though they would have cast anchors out of the foreship, Paul said to the centurion and to the soldiers, "Except these abide in the ship, ye cannot be saved." Then the soldiers cut the ropes of the boat and let her fall off. And while the day was coming on, Paul besought them all to take meat, saying, "This day is the 14th day that ye have tarried and continued fasting, having taken nothing. Wherefore I pray you to take some meat, for this is for your health. For there shall not a hair fall from the head of any of you." And when he had thus spoken, he took bread and gave thanks to God in the presence of them all. And when he had broken it, he began to eat. Then were they all of good cheer, and they also took some meat. And we were in all in the ship 216 souls.
Wow, that's quite a lot.
Big ship.
Yeah.
Yeah, 276. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And when they had eaten enough, they lighted the ship and cast out the wheat into the sea. And when it was day, they knew not the land, but they discovered a certain creek with a shore, into which they were minded, if it were possible, to thrust in the ship. When they had taken up the anchors, they committed themselves unto the sea, and mainsail to the wind, and made toward the shore. And falling into a place where 2 seas met, they ran the ship aground, and the forepart stuck fast and remained unmovable, but the hinder part was broken with the violence of the waves. And the soldiers' counsel was to kill the prisoners, lest any of them should swim up and escape. But the centurion, willing to save Paul, kept them from their purpose, and commanded that they which could swim should cast themselves first into the sea and get to land, and the rest, some on boards and some on broken pieces of the ship. So it came to pass that they escaped all safe to land.
So interesting point here brought up. So should epitinon, on pieces, be understood as masculine? So on the shoulders, and it's understood as on the shoulders of some. We can cross-reference 21:1 and 15:5. In this way, one could at least understand the change of case with epi, but the context favors taking it as a neuter. So Xenophon, quotation from Xenophon here, but as they were held back by a contrary wind, and after the ship was torn apart almost into planks, some people arrived after being saved on a certain beach. So yeah, it looks like there is. Let's see how long this note is.
Good point, Jason. Actually,
see 153 fish in the fourth gospel. 176 persons in the ship here in Acts. Both of these are triangular numbers. Where's Landon? Yeah, that's right. Maybe Landon can help us out here with that one.
Yeah.
So the report on the voyage, this isn't too long here. So the report about the voyage is the only real account of travel experiences in Acts. Because, for the other ones, they were just like, and we traveled to place X. and then the next place, and not super detailed travel accounts. Thus, it cannot be explained with the help of the itinerary hypothesis. The style of Acts 27 differs totally and precisely from the earlier reports of voyages in which we appears. Of course, Debellius, the most resolute advocate of the itinerary, saw this. He extended the hypothesis suggested by Wellhausen, saying that here an existing literary description of a journey, quote, served as a pattern, basis, or source. It had been fitted into the book by the insertion of several episodes in which Paul appears. The time of the insertions is, the theme of the insertions is Paul the deliverer. The fact of the matter is that the episodes in which Paul appears cannot be excised without leaving any gaps. Indeed, at some points, only in this way does the course of the narrative become understandable. Referencing verse 12. That which remains is of a higher literary quality than any other part of the book. Hankin points out that in Hellenistic novels, travel adventures are closely tied to the characters and the plot. Thus, one could not just appropriate a ready-made description from from somewhere or other. But one need not conceive of the process in such a mechanical way. One need only recognize that there was an established stylistic model, and that as such it would be detached from the characters in the plot, as we see quite clearly in Achilles' Titius. The first person plural is a typical device in these descriptions. Hankin argues that since soldiers are already mentioned in the source, this must already have been an account of real adventures, but he passes too quickly over the observation that Paul fails to appear, and that for this reason we cannot really speak of an actual recounting of an experience. It is kind of weirdly structured like that. That is true. We also ought to note that there is a discrepancy between the description of the events up to Malta and the account from Malta to Rome. After Malta, Paul is no longer appears as a prisoner. Thus, the sense of we shifts correspondingly. One could take this as an indication that in chapter 27, Luke was using a source document from a companion of Paul. The other possibility is that Luke was working according to a model which he had in his mind. Which I did actually want to note this from Erdman's, actually. So this does share a lot of themes and motifs with other travel journeys, as one would expect.
The continuous shipwrecking was a very common.
That's one, yeah. So first, such commonplaces occur when the risky decision is taken to set sail, even though the winter season, when sailing was not possible, is imminent. Yeah, so when the winter season is imminent. And when it is clear that one of the passengers knows better than the crew, that being Paul, then follow accounts of being abandoned to a fierce wind, a threatened shipwreck, an aborted mutiny, and ultimately an actual shipwreck, leading to the potential death of the hero. These are just some of the very common Hellenistic motifs.
Yes, and we're about to hop into the final chapter of Acts. Hey, if you're enjoying the stream, give us a like, share it with your friends, family, neighbors, ship people.
Ship people, pirates.
Yep.
Pirates, sailors, corsairs.
Captains.
Yeah, captains.
Scallywags.
Yeah, buccaneers.
Privateers.
Yeah, sure, those two. And did you know, you dear YouTube viewer, that clicking like does actually help us out? Because if there's more engagement, the video will appear in more suggested feeds. So, if you want to help us out, you can just do that. And that's all you really got to do. I mean, commenting would be nice as well.
Yeah.
But, all that helps.
Or you could damn us to obscurity.
Yeah. Do you really want to damn us to obscurity? Look at Ruben. Look at that face. How can you damn that face to obscurity?
Pretty easily.
Yep.
There you go. That's all the pitch you need. So, final chapter of the day and final chapter of Acts.
And you know what? After we finish Acts, we're really in the last section of the New Testament, which is the epistles and Revelation.
Epistles Epistles and Revelation. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Pauline ones and the Johannine ones, and yeah.
To be clear, 13 letters in the name of Paul.
Yeah.
Anonymous epistle to the Hebrews. 7 letters attributed to major figures in the history of the early church. Then Revelation. Also known as the Apocalypse of John.
Yes. Which the Greek word apocalypsis just means revelation.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah, right. Amazing. So yeah, let's hop into chapter 28. After we were brought safely through, this again, the we is popping up.
Yes.
We then learned that the island was called Malta.
So this would be Melita in Greece and Rome. It was included in the province of Sicily and is located 58 miles south of the island of Sicily.
I think we've heard of Malta before.
Yes.
Well, yeah. The native people showed us unusual kindness, for they kindled a fire and welcomed us all, because it had begun to rain and was cold. How nice of them.
Mm-hmm.
When Paul had gathered a bundle of sticks and...
Oh, by the way, the native people,
Yeah.
translated in different ways. There's native people. KJV uses the translation barbarians.
Right, because the Greek is actually barbaroi.
But it could also be islanders. All non-Greek speaking were called barbarians by the Greeks. Far from being uncivilized tribesmen, they were Phoenicians in ancestry and used a Phoenician dialect, but were thoroughly Romanized.
Interestingly, Jason, so I don't really think that's a good argument for deciding on how many letters someone would have written, but there is a lost letter to the Laodiceans that could have been written by Paul. It was part of Marcion's canon. Unfortunately, we don't really have, it's not extant, but that is a possible lost epistle of Paul.
Yeah.
So when Paul had gathered a bundle of sticks and put them on the fire, a viper came out because of the heat and fastened on his hand. Ooh, exciting.
A viper.
Yeah. Like Randy Orton. No, I'm kidding.
So let me see. The viper must have been known to the islanders to be poisonous. So
yeah, a lot of snakes, they can really do some damage. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, if you see enough snakes, bite you and people die from the bite, you're gonna start, fearing a whole bunch of snakes.
Yeah, and they'll come to this conclusion in a moment here.
Okay, fantastic. When the native people saw the creature hanging from his hand, they said to one another, "No doubt this man is a murderer, though he has escaped from the sea. Justice has not allowed him to live." Wow, what a weird view of...
Right, because people get what they deserve.
Right, yeah, exactly. Man, that view is so inconsistent, though.
Yeah.
Like, it would be... Part of it would be really nice if there was some cosmic justice, right? Just, bad people will, be punished. Like, if someone is, horrible, but then doesn't, get some kind of retribution... We're kind of bummed out about that because we're like, something bad should have happened to you, you fucking asshole. And then it doesn't happen and we're kind of bummed out about it. So
Sucks.
Yeah. So on some level, I understand wanting that kind of reality, but it's also not the way it goes. So he, however, shook off the creature into the fire and suffered no harm. They were waiting for him to swell up or suddenly fall down dead. But when they had waited a long time and saw no misfortune come to him, they changed their minds and said that he was a god.
So
What?
that's pretty intense, but
Must be a god.
a couple things that I want to know. One is look at the Greek for that verse.
Okay.
Because the term for swelling up is what would actually be used by physicians at the time. And I know that we had some conversation about Luke's career
Oh, yeah.
back a while ago.
Okay.
And this is apparently...
Sorry, which verse did you want to specifically look at?
The verse 6, where they expect him to swell up.
Okay, I should probably go to chapter 28 in the Greek.
Apparently, the term for swell up that's used there is what would be used by physicians or would be used regularly in medical settings for inflammation, and it is only used by Luke in the New Testament.
I see.
It looks like swell up. Yeah, it's pimpremi. Okay.
So some evidence for that medical background of the author, potentially, yeah.
That is interesting. And it looks like I'm checking the commentary on this. It doesn't look like there's anything specifically about that. But yeah, either way, they thought he was a god.
Yeah,
that's quite the jump.
Yeah, in Iconium, Paul's healing of a paralytic prompts the residents to refer to him as Hermes.
Oh yeah, that's right. He didn't like that very much.
No.
So yeah, the
this is a parallel to the Lystrans' attempt to worship Paul and Barnabas in chapter 14.
Okay, so yeah, the present participle expecting is used for something which happened previously. It represents the imperfect. The construction in verse 6, it's a genitive absolute. That's annoying. I hate those. It's basically where both the subject and the verb are in the genitive case. So by just looking at the words alone, you can't tell what they mean, but in context in the sentence, you can. It's just meant to differentiate clauses, essentially. So they're really annoying. When you first learn about genitive absolutes, they're very annoying. At least they were for me.
Hey, when you see the word R-E-A-D without any context in a sentence, what do you think that it means?
Read.
What's the tense?
Oh, okay. I guess like a.
And how do you pronounce it based off of that tense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think of read, and I think of that being like to read, like as an infinitive.
Yes,
yeah.
as a present tense thing too.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Whereas it could also be interpreted as a past tense.
Yeah.
Right.
So, anyways, the construction is grammatically verbally harsh. They almost always are. The incident is the most extreme example of theos aner, so that would be divine man. Motif and acts, unlike the incident reported.
Thank you, Ellis, for the 1999.
Ellis, huge dono. Thank you very much appreciated. And yes, good victory sticker. Very good victory sticker.
Absolutely.
So unlike the incident reported in 14:11 through 18, which is the one that was we were talking about before, no critical reservations are expressed. Nevertheless, one should recall that the motif has analogies in Jewish apocalyptic literature. In the apocryphal Acts, the motif is widespread. The Acts of Thomas, for example, quote, but the crowd worshipped him as a god. Compare the Acts of Peter 5:29 for the motif of a divine man and the harmless beasts. You can compare Plutarch and Lucian as well. So it pops up in a whole bunch of places.
Yes. Continue.
All right, we'll do. So they thought he was a god. Now, in the neighborhood of that place were lands belonging to the chief man of the island, named Publius, who received us and entertained us hospitably for 3 days. It happened that the father of Publius lay sick with fever and dysentery. And
Publius is a Roman name, but the first name and not the family name. It must have been what the islanders called him.
I suppose, yeah. That would make sense.
The chief official here would have been the first man of Malta, a technical term for the top authority. Luke's designation is accurate here as elsewhere, even though the Greek term used is not a common one.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know. So, it happened that the father of Publius lay sick with fever and dysentery, and Paul visited him and prayed, and putting his hands on him, healed him. And when this had taken place, the rest of the people on the island who had diseases also came and were cured. They also honored us greatly, and when we were about to sail, they put on board whatever we needed. So they honored us greatly. It looks like there is some textual note here on just the usage of us, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, so it is quite absurd to read out of him, us, so us as the object of the sentence, and were cured, that Luke, the physician, gave assistance. The cures did not come about because of medical treatment, but because of miraculous power. The intention is to give a final impression of Paul before his entrance into Rome. This passage is instructive for our evaluation of the we narrative. So it was not an eyewitness account, essentially.
All right.
Continuing on here. So now Paul arrives at Rome.
We have a time skip.
After 3 months, we set sail in a ship that had wintered in the island, a ship of Alexandria, with the twin gods as a figurehead. The twin gods.
Where is that the end of the verse?
Yes, the end of verse 11.
Okay, so in the NRSV has the twin brothers, and the NIV has here the twin gods Castor and Pollux.
Yeah, Greek gods there.
Yes,
okay,
two sons of Zeus, the guardian deities of sailors.
Huh.
Makes sense. Yeah, it doesn't look like. I feel like there should be more commentary here, but So the Dioscuri, I guess. Yeah, Castor and Pollux.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were deliverers in times of distress at sea.
Yes, often considers guardians of sailors, as in Euripides, Horace. A figurehead would have been there, a carved image in the form of a deity, animal, or some other object placed on the ship's bow.
All right. Continuing on here. Looks like I have some textual commentary coming up. So, with the twin gods as a figurehead. Putting in at Syracuse, we stayed there for 3 days, and from there we made a circuit and arrived at Rhegium. And after 1 day, a south wind sprang up, and on the second day we came to... Holy shit, how the fuck do I pronounce this one?
Puteoli.
Puteoli?
Puteoli!
What a name.
That's
what a
the
name.
Word of the day, Puteoli.
Is it? I sure hope not.
Why the fuck not? We always have a word of the day now.
I don't think we do.
Or whatever. That's the thing for the end of the show.
No, that one
we
should
haven't
not
had
be.
anything yet.
That one should not be. There we found brothers and were invited to stay with them for 7 days, and so we came to Rome.
The Greek is brothers, but the implication is believers.
Yeah. That did happen quite a bit, where they use that term, like you say, brother in Christ, right? Yeah.
The final part of the journey takes Paul along the eastern coast of Sicily, Syracuse, to Rhegium, the port on the Italian peninsula opposite Sicily, up the western coast of Italy to the port of Puteoli near Naples, and finally to Rome.
Great. Okay. Continuing on. There were these brothers in Christ. And the brothers there, when they heard about us, came as far as the Forum of Appius and the
town 43 miles south of Rome.
And 3 taverns.
A resting spot 33 miles south of Rome.
So that was all in verse 15, it looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some Roman Christians came to the Forum of Appius to meet Paul. Beyond this, there would not be certain of the way he would come. The 3 taverns, Roman believers met him here. The term tavern was used to designate any kind of shop.
Ah, all right then. Okay, we got some stuff coming up shortly. On seeing them, Paul thanked God and took courage. And when we came into Rome, Paul was allowed to stay by himself with the soldier who guarded him. Good for him, I suppose.
Yeah, the description is similar to the treatment afforded to Agrippa I while living in Rome, according to Josephus's Antiquities of the Jews, 18-35, and is consistent with the deference Roman authorities frequently show to Paul.
After 3 days, he called together the local leaders of Jews, and when they had gathered, he said to them, "Brothers, though I had done nothing against our people or the customs of our fathers, yet I was delivered as a prisoner from Jerusalem into the hands of the Romans."
So,
the
leaders
Paul,
of the Jews here.
Paul, he specifically requested basically to stay with the Romans.
Yes.
I get that it was lesser of two evils sort of thing for him, but still.
But there was a previous decree of the Emperor Claudius that was allowed to lapse, and Jews were now returning to Rome with their leaders. When he refers to them as his brothers, it's an epithet that recognized the common Jewish blood he shared with them.
Oh, and you know what? I think you know what? It's not actually that big of a deal. I wanted to cite this, but it's not actually that big of a problem. And it was a while ago that we read those verses, so whatever. Mm-hmm. Continuing on. So into the hands of the Romans, when they had examined me, they wished to set me at liberty because there was no reason for the death penalty in my case. But because the Jews objected, I was compelled to appeal to Caesar, though I had no charge to bring against my nation. For this reason, therefore, I have asked to see you and speak with you, since it is because of the hope of Israel that I am wearing this chain. And they said to him, "We have received no letters from Judea about you, and none of the brothers coming here has reported or spoken any evil about you. But we desire to hear from you what your views are, for with regard to this sect, we know that everywhere it is spoken against."
So this is a perception that better reflects the time in which Acts was written, rather than when Paul was in Rome.
Right, yeah, because it probably wouldn't have spread that far.
Right.
Yeah. When they had appointed a day for him, they came to him at his lodging in greater numbers. From morning till evening he expounded to them, testifying to the kingdom of God and trying to convince them about Jesus both from the law of Moses and from the prophets. And some were convinced by what he said, but others disbelieved. And disagreeing among themselves, they departed after Paul had made one statement. "The Holy Spirit was right in saying to your fathers through Isaiah the prophet." After I coughed, he didn't say that.
This is going to be Isaiah 6, 9 through 10.
"Go to this people and say, you will indeed hear but never understand, and you will indeed see but never perceive. For this people's heart was grown dull, and with their ears they can barely hear, and their eyes they have closed, lest they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, and turn, and I would heal them." Therefore, let it be known to you that this salvation of God has been sent to the Gentiles. They will listen.
Yes, being sent to the Gentiles on 2 previous occasions. Jewish opposition led Paul to announce a turn to the Gentiles. While Paul continued to engage Jews, the inclusion of a lengthy passage from Isaiah and the report that he received all persons make it appear that any Jewish mission is now over.
Hey, so usually, or a lot of the times, there is an extra verse here. Do you have a verse 29 in the KJV?
I have a verse 20 in the KJV.
Yeah, just out of curiosity.
Well, the KJV...
Too big for you.
Yeah, too big, yeah.
And it does have a verse 29.
It does have verse 29.
And when he had said these words, the Jews departed and had great reasoning among themselves.
Yeah. So, the Western text has an addition after verse 28 that was adopted by the Byzantine text and lies in the authorized version. The addition was probably made because of the abrupt transition from verse 28 to verse 30. But apparently it wasn't originally in there, as is tradition. Conselman just leaves it out of his commentary entirely. Doesn't even say a word about it, interestingly enough. This is the last section right here.
Last 2 verses.
Yep. He lived there 2 whole years at his own expense and welcomed all who came to him, proclaiming the kingdom of God and teaching about the Lord Jesus Christ with all boldness and without hindrance. So he is now living there.
Yeah, a couple of things here. Acts ends without narrating Paul's death.
Yeah.
Although the text often alludes to it. Acts may have avoided this part of the story since it was understood by contemporary Christians that Roman authorities were responsible, according to the Acts of Paul, Eusebius' history. And thus maintaining the emphasis on Jews as those responsible for the persecution of Paul. For 2 whole years, the time reference suggests that Paul's accusers had failed to follow up on their intentions to prosecute him, or possibly having done so, the charges were subsequently dismissed. In either case, the ending of the book confirms Paul's innocence of any crime. As for the boldness, Paul's open preaching in the capital of the empire fulfills the programmatic command of Jesus to spread the gospel to the ends of the earth, with the city of Rome representing the empire's wide expanse. Now, the study Bible here says that Paul served the Lord during the full period, waiting for his accusers to press the trial in Rome. There are a number of indications that he was released from his imprisonment. First, Acts stops abruptly at this time. Second, Paul wrote to churches expecting to visit them soon, so he must have anticipated a release. Third, a number of the details in the pastoral letters do not fit into the historical setting given in the book of Acts. Following the close of the book, these details indicate a return to Asia Minor, Crete, and Greece. 4, tradition indicates that Paul went to Spain. Even if he did not go, the very fact that a tradition arose suggests a time when he could have taken that journey. So there are various things there with the ending.
Yeah, there's one hypothesis that suggests that Luke had planned to write a 3rd volume.
Yeah.
Sequelitis,
though, wasn't as good as the first book, so he didn't bother making the 3rd.
So let's see. Another possibility, Acts was composed before Paul's trial had been completed, but the farewell address in chapter 20 argues against this. According to Roman law, the case would have been dismissed after 2 years if the plaintiff had failed to appear by that time. In this case, the plaintiff was the representative of the Sanhedrin. But was a plaintiff necessary in the case of a remissio? Not sure what that means. I don't know. The Second Edict of Cyrene allows us to answer the question in the negative. So I suppose the answer is no. In any case, Luke does not hint at anything like this. The decisive text is the edict cited in, there's an appendix for it, but there's an edict. Neither this text nor the others which have been cited lend support to this hypothesis. Another one would also be Paul's martyrdom was originally narrated but was then removed. But the ending doesn't appear to be fragmentary. And it seems like the purpose of the book has basically been fulfilled at this point.
Yeah.
It's just preaching of the gospel. It is interesting, though, the 2 years thing. Maybe that I feel like that might have something to do with the Roman law.
Yeah.
But it is certainly it has completed its job of telling about the propagation of Christianity.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the end of Acts. And you know what? It's also the end of our coverage of Luke's writings.
That is true, yeah.
So what do we think? What do we think of Acts?
You know,
For the most part, I liked it.
yeah, I liked it.
Newest,
Yeah, it was decent, yeah.
It had a
fairly
narrative.
good.
Yeah, I would say so.
I was so tired of these little gimmicky stories, so having an actual like overarching plot was pleasant.
yeah, that is accurate.
Given what we read.
Yeah, and there were some chapters there. I forgot which one just confused the hell out of all of us.
It was the middle. In the middle, there was a lot of redactory kind of feeling.
I mean, this last chapter that we just read, in chapter 27, also has a lot of textual additions to it. You can clearly see it, honestly. But yeah, it's important to point out that the ending there is very different from the rest of it.
Right.
It's a lot better, honestly. But it's not like it doesn't share similarities with the earlier stuff in the text.
So with Acts, I mean, we get various heroes. We get to hear about their journeys and the riots and everything that happens with them. We
It's
get
some pointless side characters, but whatever.
We get multiple prison break scenes. It's a pretty good book. It's not as good as Luke.
I don't know. I feel like the ending might have bumped it up a notch.
The ending is good, but it also feels out of place.
I liked
yeah.
that Luke was more practical. He didn't just take the side of the Jews or the Jews that he agreed with immediately. He used his words tactically or tactfully.
Yeah, it's
Court
not.
scenes were interesting.
Yeah, there's not as much like hatred of the Jews as in John.
Right, yeah. And John, it's something entirely different.
But there is a bit like they definitely blamed the Jews.
Yeah.
Right, for the
But
death of
they were
Jesus.
still identifying with Judaism itself at its core.
Yeah. And they even demonstrate that the leaders of the Jewish groups are like, no, don't persecute them. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it happens anyway. So
It is
we
true.
kind of
plus-
get mixed messages about the Jews.
Yeah. It really
Acts.
depends on which author you're reading, right?
Right. But in Luke Acts specifically.
Right. Yeah, that is true. It seems like while they wanted to maintain Judaism, they also wanted to point out that they were not the same Jews that were disagreeing with them, I guess. But like that, we get that already.
Right.
I think anyone would have understood that. Yep. Although, yeah, Klaus, for the the epistles are not going to be super exciting or anything.
They're not going to be as bad as Psalms.
Right. That is true. Not going to be as bad as Psalms.
We spent like half a
Chronicles
year
or the Book of the
just
Kings.
reading Psalms.
Oh, I mean, the thing is, the Deuteronomistic history itself was fine overall. It did get like very repetitive in places with the
Lists.
Yeah, exactly. But overall, I think it was fine. But Revelation will be awesome.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to do Revelation.
We're going to have a lot of commentary on Revelation.
I
too.
have already so many commentaries at my place.
No, we should do. We should do predicting the end of the world based off of what's written in the Bible.
You know what's funny? We could, but that would require a whole lot of bullshitting.
Yeah, it would. But
We should give them
All
all the
the
answers,
Christians
not
have
just
done
one
it
answer, but every
already.
answer.
I mean, I guess, they could use a... so
there's
they
red
use a hand.
heifers in Jerusalem.
Oh, right, yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
Gog. Well, anyways, hey, if you enjoyed the stream today, check us out on Patreon. Yeah. You can win things.
You can win T-shirts. And you know what? If you don't want to, take the chances, you can just get yourself a T-shirt.
Yeah.
Here is one of our newer shirts, the Church of Piety.
It's a pinned product.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, you can also support us through our Amazon wish list.
Yeah,
full of books.
Yep, links to all this stuff is in the description, by the way.
Yeah.
Because Nightbot is doing its job.
And today, the show was brought to you by
Nord
Shadow Legends.
Nord Shadow Legends, a free-to-play online video game where you can choose your favorite country and then decide whether or not your access to the internet is restricted.
Yeah.
How long did you guys work on that?
Seconds. I mean, thank you, artificially generated images. They make it so much easier for me to do stupid shit.
Yep.
I put a little bit of thought into it. But
we were saving that for you.
Yeah, I figured you were.
Yep. Anyways, see you on Sunday. Facebook, Twitter,
all that
Sunday,
stuff. All links
Facebook,
are in the description. Please press like.
Oh yeah.